So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at a village kuti in Gampaha, and thought to record a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. So I thought that could start with just a little meditation, so can lean forward a bit and arch your spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And if mindfulness wanders off, and one starts thinking about the past or the future, can just bring the mind back to the present moment, to the breath. And before we finish meditating, can spend some time contemplating impermanence, how everything that's subject to arising is subject to ceasing. It's not me, it's not mine, and to cling to it is suffering. And can open our eyes and do a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So, hope that everybody's keeping well wherever might be. And got a message from a fellow on the internet the other day, and was paraphrasing, is basically about the loss of a loved one and how to manage in the face of a loss of a loved one when it feels like he used very strong language to describe the suffering that he was experiencing as a result of losing his loved one. So the Buddha actually has a lot of teachings on this, and the main one is that one should reflect that there's basically nobody in the world, whether a human being or a Brahma or the highest gods. Nobody can get 5 things, basically. And I'll just summarize them. The last 2 are pretty similar. It was basically, what is subject to being born, not be born. May what is subject to aging, not age. May what is subject to dying, not die. May what is subject to destruction, not be destroyed, basically. And may what is subject to ending, not end. And it's kind of, basically a lot of them are about ending. We can also put illness in there. What is subject to being ill, not be ill. So it's part and parcel of everything that arises in the world that it's subject to ending. And oftentimes when our loved ones die, especially if it's in like a tragic circumstance, then we think that we're the only people that this happens to. Remember, there was this phrase that I used to hear when I was a young man. It's like, well, it's the kind of thing that always happens to somebody else. So when somebody dies in their like 90s, they're 95, and they've lived a full life, they've done all these things, they've been virtuous people, then we don't feel so much regret. It's kind of, well, we knew it was coming. But if it's a young person whose life gets cut tragically short, or if it's like an unvirtuous person, or it's a person who committed suicide, we feel quite bad about this. And it seems like something that shouldn't happen. It's like, this shouldn't happen. This tragedy has occurred, and this thought can also occur, why is this happening to me? Like, why is this happening to my relatives? The Buddha has this kind of, there's a story, I'm not sure if it's actually in the canon or if it's part of the commentary. I think it might be in the canon actually. But there's one of the nuns, and when she was a laywoman, she went mad because I think first 2 of her children died, then her husband died, then she went to go see her family, and her family died, and she went mad. And she went to go see the Buddha, and she said, oh no, it was another one. It was a nun whose, I think, baby had died, and she went mad. And she went to go see the Buddha, and she said, do you have medicine for my baby? She was going around everywhere saying, do you have medicine for my baby? Asking all these people, and people like throwing things at her saying, you're mad. So she went to see the Buddha, and the Buddha said, she asked if he had a cure, he had medicine for the baby. And the Buddha said, yes, mustard seeds. And go get them, and I'll cure your baby. And he said, but you have to go find them from a house where nobody's died. And so she said, okay. And she went looking. She went to every house, but every house she went to, she asked them for mustard seeds. It seemed like they were happy to give, basically most places or all. But she was not able to find a house where nobody had died. And after this, she regained her mindfulness. She realized, wait, this tragedy doesn't just happen to me, it happens to everybody. So when a loved one dies, then it's important to reflect in this way, that this is part and parcel of life. And the reflection won't seem to hit home, because a lot of the times what we do when we go through our life is we blind ourselves to one half. We like to see the things when they're young, when they're strong, when they're giving us the external sensual pleasures that we want. But we don't like to see them when they fall away. It's because we attach to these things, it's because we cling to them when they're in the phase that we like, that we suffer when they change. That's why. So we can reflect appropriately on this, that this suffering is not something that's coming because of something somebody else has done, like they've done this to me. I mean, it does in a sense, but actually we're the ones who create this suffering for ourselves. We create it for ourselves because we build up an image of our life and the people in our life of how they're supposed to be and how it's going to be. And if something comes to break that image, then we suffer immensely. The stronger the love, the stronger the attachment, the stronger the reliance on that thing, the stronger the suffering is. So this is something that we do when we cling to these things, when they're healthy, when they're well, when they're young and strong. So the solution for this is to reflect appropriately in these ways. It's not just me that this happens to. This happens to everybody. And actually these things that, you always figure, this is always happening to somebody else. You go and talk to different people, things have happened to them. When you reach 40 or you reach 50, you look around at the things that have happened to you and happened to various ones of your friends, have happened to relatives. All these things that aren't supposed to happen, they're happening all the time. It's just that often people don't like to see them. Especially if we're in a Western society, these things get hidden. Even old age and death get hidden. When people get sick, they're off somewhere else. They're not really in the home. So usually all we see is young, healthy people. When you look on TV, all you see is young, healthy people, and this is what we see. So these are the perceptions that get built up in our reality over and over again. So when we think in this way, this is not just me, and there's nothing that I can do to change it. What is appropriate for me to do? Whatever rituals there are that we can do to honor our passed away relatives, then we undertake those rituals. So if there's a funeral service that we can do, then we do that. If there's like a gravestone or a tombstone, then we do that. If we gather together with our friends and family to show honor to those people, according to whatever customs one has. But there's a point beyond which, after we do these things, we're still feeling this grief, still feeling this incredible pain. And these things will stop serving a use. So the Buddha says, to whatever extent there's a use, basically whatever extent they're appropriate, we do them. So now we've reflected appropriately. This isn't just happening to me. So this is one thing. The suffering gets perpetuated a lot when we have this idea, I'm the only one this is happening to. We can remove that idea intellectually. Still there's suffering. We know that this has been built up because of things we've done in the past, because we've gone out and gone into, attached to, fallen in love with things and not seen the other half of them, not seen the danger in them, that this is what can happen to the things that we love. We know that we've done this in the past. We've performed the proper rituals, but still we feel suffering. So then what to do? Now, one of the things to understand about the perpetuation of suffering and the loss of something that somebody liked is that often it's tied together with all these other things in one's life. One was used to doing all these different things with this person that one loves. So one goes to do something and one thinks of that person, right? Or almost anything that one does will link in 1 or 2 degrees of separation to that person. So what happens is actually in these situations, our thoughts can become almost like an enemy. Every thought that we think tends to jump in 1 or 2 links back to this person who passed away. And we suffer from it. And one of the things that we think is we're doing a lot of honor, we're showing a lot of respect to people by suffering for them, by thinking of them in such a way that we remember them when we feel sad, or thinking of them and reminiscing in such a way. We have to understand when we do these things, when we think in these ways, when we reminisce about the old times, reminisce about this and that inappropriately, in excess proportion, and not really when it's needed, then what happens is these thoughts quickly turn into suffering. They link in just 1 or 2 links into suffering. So when we think about it, what does it mean for a person when they've stopped suffering from the loss of a loved one? It means that they are living their life in such a way they're not thinking about that person all the time. Yeah. Their life has moved on in such a way that the activities that they do, the various things that they do, are no longer linked and interconnected with that person. So the mind works on a process of habituation. So if we keep sending our mind back to think about the past, think about what we did with this person, think about how things were so great with that person, we're compounding our own suffering. We're practicing sending our mind into a world, into a perception where we have this enormous loss and we don't see the things, the duties that we have to do right now. We don't see the things that are good that we have to do right now. So the Buddha says, if we've done all these things and we've done all the rituals, then we reflect, there's nothing that I can do about this. What important work am I doing now? So if we have a meditation practice, we know we keep our mind on our meditation object in the present moment, and we don't let it go. We don't let it proliferate into thoughts that are not helpful. Actually, when we reflect on it this way, if we're getting really sad about a person's loss, if we're thinking about them all the time, we're looking at pictures, we're reminiscing, who does it help? Right? It doesn't help the person who passed away. It doesn't help us. And most importantly, it doesn't help the people around us who are still alive, who we do have responsibilities to. The people around us in our life now who are still important to us, who can help us grow in the Dhamma, who we have responsibility, who have helped us in the past, and we now have a chance to help them. Those people get really worried when a person is stricken with grief and they can't eat properly, they can't do things properly. So actually, by going back, reminiscing, thinking about our lost loved ones, getting really, really sad, and it's almost like we feel like we're honoring them when we can't do things because we're so sad. It's like the sadder you are, the more it shows that you cared about that person. Actually, in some cultures, they have these like mourning periods that last for years, and you're not supposed to do anything during those periods. So this doesn't help anybody, really. It doesn't help the person who passed away. It doesn't help us. We can reflect properly in this way, and then we direct our minds to what's beneficial to do right now. What this means is that if thoughts of our loved one come up, then we don't pay attention to them. It's not a disrespect to that person. We are grateful for the good things that they did in our life, but now that time has passed, and there's nothing we can do to get it back. Now, there's things that are important we have to do now. So a thought comes up, we don't think about them. We think about what we have to do now. But if the time comes on their death anniversary, various things, when we can do something for them, then we do that. And most importantly, in the Buddha sense, if somebody has died suddenly, if they've died tragically, if they've committed suicide sometimes, although they're in a much worse state if they've committed suicide, they wake up confused after that. And sometimes they're still very attached to the world that they were in. And so they show up in a place where they're basically a ghost. Those ghosts, they can receive merit dedicated to them. So this is actually something we really can do. So the appropriate time to think of our loved one is when we're dedicating merit to them. We think of them, may you be well and happy. May you have all the clothes you need. May you have all the shelter you need. May you encounter the Buddhist teachings, and may you practice in line with it, and may you attain Nibbana. This is what's really a help to those people. If they're a ghost, they show up there and then they don't have anything. They're very destitute. So we can help them by dedicating things to them. So when we reflect in this way, this isn't just me. This happens too. It happens to everybody. We remove part of the tragedy that comes with that. When we reflect in this way, this is because of what I've done in the past. This is my responsibility. It can remove some of the thing, because of what I've attached to. It can remove some of the sting that happens when we feel like somebody else has done this to us. They've caused us to lose this person. When we perform the appropriate rituals to help that person, then we're showing respect to them in terms of our culture. And perhaps most importantly, when we stop these chain-linking thoughts, where every thought we have links back to that person, by not thinking about them, turning our mind to what's important to do right now in the present moment, then we help the people who are still alive. And we help ourselves because they're not worried about us. Our enemies aren't happy, our friends aren't pained. Our face is the same as before. And it's hard to do, it's hard to practice, but this is something that we can actually practice. And going forward in the future, we can reflect appropriately. These people who are around me right now, the time may come unexpectedly when I lose them. So what can I do? How can I make merit for them? How can I be helpful for them? Those people who've helped me, how can I be generous to them, kind and compassionate to them? And if we've lived our life in this way, it also helps these regrets that happen when we have a shaky relationship with somebody and they suddenly pass away. So the Buddha calls there's suttas where the monks always give the same advice to reflect in this way. And it's called the removal of the dart of sorrow. In other words, when you're stricken with a dart, especially if it's poisonous, then you can't do much. It's like everything you do is painful. You walk, you talk, you sit, it's always painful. So we remove this dart by reflecting appropriately and directing our mind appropriately. Having done what we can for these people, then we put our mind to the present moment. What's important for us to do now? And we give gifts, and hoping that if these people have been born in a bad state, may they receive the results of their gifts. This is what we can really do for them. And this is what can help to remove this dart of sorrow, so that all of our movements aren't painful. When we sit, when we stand, when we walk, when we talk, it's not painful. And this benefits us, it benefits the people who are alive, and it benefits the people who passed away. So these are some of the pieces of advice coming from the Buddha on how to practice in the face of death. Okay, so I think leave that for reflection, and wishing everybody all the blessings of Dhamma practice.